What is up, weather enthusiasts? I'm your host, Pat's Path Predictor. Let's get right into the weather. Alright, so here's the situation we have for you, ladies and gentlemen. We have some more information for you with this potentially big severe weather outbreak that's going to be impacting much of the deep south, as well as parts of the mid-Atlantic and Texas on Tuesday and Wednesday. So we're going to go ahead and dive right into that right here as we continue to get all the information and all the data for you. As we continue to get it, we now have some more mid-range runs. We now have the North American model. We have the NAM that is coming in. So we're going to be taking a quick look at that, as well as looking at some more of the SPC outlooks, as well as reading out some of what the NWS is going for as well. So let's go ahead and dive right into it right here. But before we do that, we have this right here. We have our storm code issuance from John, our head admin at Storms United. We have a hatched code yellow in effect for parts of Missouri, Kentucky, Tennessee, Arkansas, Louisiana, and Mississippi right here. That's likely going to get expanded, and we are going to be seeing a potential upgrade tomorrow as the day 3 starts to come in. And we have a code yellow from New Jersey all the way down to Texas right here, mainly because of the severe weather threat. These odds are going to increase. The threat level is going to increase as we get this going on. If we are going to see an enhanced or a moderate risk tomorrow, which I highly believe it's going to be a moderate tomorrow, we're going to be looking at a code orange or code red respectively. A hatched code orange or hatched code red, mainly because of how big of a threat that this is. And that's generally what we're doing. That's the kind of talk we're having at Storms United as we continue to give you more information and more data on this system right here. And as we continue to give you that, we're going to go ahead and also take a look at the SPC. Here's the situation that we have. They have expanded the 30% risk down to Alabama right here, further east right here, further up to the north as well. And the 15 risk goes all the way from St. Louis to close to Houston and through much of Alabama right here, and all of that stuff that we have going on as well. So let's go ahead and take a quick gander at this. That's what we have for day 4. For day 5, we have a 15% risk for parts of Georgia, the Carolinas, Virginia, and the Delmarva region. Right here, and southern New Jersey, mainly because of the squall line setup that we're going to be seeing with this as well. So we're going to have to take this very seriously. Here's what we have from the Storm Prediction Center right here. Medium range guidance suggests that an initially zonal intense upper level jet across the western into central mid-latitude Pacific may undergo considerable amplification into and throughout this period. It remains a bit unclear how emerging waves will impact the downstream pattern by the middle to later portion of next week. However, it still appears that one significant preceding shortwave trough will progress through the southern Rockies before accelerating east-northeastward into the mid next week. This next part's generally talking about the guidance and all that stuff. Here's the important part right here. This may include, like at least the cyclogenesis, this may include an evolving warm sector with intensifying low-level and deep layer shear and the presence of the southerly to southwesterly flow strengthening up to 50 to 100 knots in the 8 to 500 millibar layer, coincident with an influx of moistening and destabilizing boundary layer air off the northwestern Gulf. So here's the situation that we have right here. This is going to be a very, very big shear-driven event. You're not going to particularly see that much instability. Most I'm seeing is like around 1,500, 1,600 joules per kilogram. But granted, this is 3 days out, and we're going to have to continue to pay attention to it. But by and large, and from what I'm taking a look at as I adjust my camera right here, by and large, we're going to ultimately be seeing a lot of stuff going on. This is going to be very shear-driven, and the shear is going to be absolutely incredible. And as we continue as we show you soundings later on in the video, I will explain more and why I am so concerned about this 3 days out and why I'm talking about this so early out. So here's what we have going on right here. We actually have, before we get to the models, we actually have something from the Colorado State University. This is their modeling that they have pulled up for 0Z and 12Z. The 12Z is not out yet. The 0Z is. Here's what we have going on. This is for the severe weather risk for day 4 that we're seeing. Here's what we have. Max probability of severe weather. We're at over a 0.5 at this current point. Typically with your risk and how the colors are associated, you're looking at whether it's enhanced, marginal, slight, all those things right here. What the SPC, or not the SPC, what the Colorado State University is looking for at this current point, what they're doing with this is they're looking at a possible moderate risk based on this. This hatched area is indicative of significant severe weather right here. We already have a more than 45% risk of whether it's tornadoes, straight line winds, hail in parts of Mississippi, Alabama, and not Alabama, Arkansas, and Louisiana right here. And they're in their forecast, they're already calling for a moderate risk right here, and I believe that is increasingly likely. You're also looking at this right here. That's their the SPC's day 4. That's their that's 30% right now. We're gonna have to see how this pans out, but ultimately, Colorado State is taking this very seriously. A lot of the other models and a lot of the other guidance I've watched is also screaming about this as well, saying, hey, this is going to be a very big event. You're going to want to take this very seriously. In fact, NWS Little Rock, Arkansas actually put out something right here. I'm going to go ahead and read it. Shout out to Tristan for sending me this. As the front, and this is what's going to be driving it. Just for context, there's going to be a cold front that's also going to be driving it and giving this stuff more than enough forcing for things to really ramp up. But here's what they have saying. As the front begins to move across the state Tuesday, rain and storms will develop ahead of it and move into the area. With the 500 level jet at 100 to 200, 120 knots nearby and with a greater than 50 knot low level jet in place, shear looks impressive across the area. Available 12Z data continues to indicate that instability could be a potentially limiting factor locally. Some early day precip and associated cloud cover could inhibit available instability, but watch this next sentence right here. Though it wouldn't take much given the features in place. We'll continue to monitor instability trends as the system nears. You don't need a lot of instability. You don't need a lot of CAPE if you're looking at up to 120 knots of shear, 120 knots of winds at 500 millibars with a jet, and the LLJ at over 50 knots. Like your bulk shear, if it gets up to the level that we're looking at right here, which is well over 75 knots, you don't need a lot of instability to get things going. An infamous example of this, as I recently referred to this, is the 1965 Palm Sunday outbreak, where CAPE only got up to about 1,400 joules per kilogram, but you had bulk shear values up to 120 knots at 0 to 6 kilometers, and it allowed up to 55 tornadoes to really just tear across much of Indiana, Ohio, and Michigan, and those areas as well. And I just figured I'd bring that up once again, because you don't need a lot of instability if you have a lot of shear, and it's not exactly the other way around. Per se, but in this case, it doesn't really matter. Let's go ahead and get into the runs right here. We're going to go ahead and show you the North American model that we have pulled up here. We're going to start with the continental United States. 18Z is coming out right now, but I am going to be using the 12Z because we can get the biggest picture from this. And if it's still coming out and we have enough data by the time we're done filming this video, I look at the 18Z towards the end of it, then so be it. But we're going to go ahead and show you the 12Z for right now. Here's the wind speed that we are looking at right here, and I'm sure you guys can can see this right here. I'm actually going to go ahead and move my camera view a little bit just so that way I can, in editing, make this a little bit easier for you guys to see. But okay, here we go. So ultimately, here's what we're potentially looking at. Pay attention to what's going to be happening in the next couple of days or so. So ultimately, you have this shortwave trough moving into off the Pacific coast right here into California, Arizona, New Mexico, those areas right here. What's going to be happening is you're going to see a low pressure system developing, in part because of this where the angle of this trough is near the Colorado Rocky Mountains right here. It's going to be a classic Colorado low, except you're not going to see as much snow with it as you were seeing it in the last couple of months. Instead, you're going to be seeing a Colorado low that's going to generate a lot of severe weather, particularly from Texas east into the potentially as far east as the Carolinas, as we're potentially looking at right there. But here's what we have. You're looking at this. You're looking at where the strongest jet is. It's gradually shifting more and more to the east, and then boom, the trough becomes negatively tilted right here. And why, as this is going on, I apologize if I'm stammering a lot, but I wanted to go ahead and show you this. As this continues to happen, you see a lot of this wind shear values. The max wind shear values are absolutely insane. With the NAM, we're looking at 114 peak in parts of Arkansas right here. At 500 millibars, which is about 18,000 feet up, given or take. That is a lot of wind. That is pretty insane, to say the very least. That jet is going to be hammering through much of the south, and it's going to help generate a lot of wind shear, and that's absolutely what we don't want to see. And here's what we were looking at 850. This is quite interesting right here. This is about 5,000 feet up or so, but look at the wind shear values at 21Z from pretty much Illinois all the way down to Louisiana, encompassing much of the Mississippi River Valley. You're seeing up to 80 knots of wind shear, like 80 knot winds right here at 1,500 meters up. That's about 5,000 feet up. That is absolutely incredible right here. What is the GFS even having? The GFS, if we take a look at, yeah, we do have a couple areas of 80 plus knots as well. You're seeing a lot of agreement in terms of how strong this jet's going to be, but one area that we're not so in agreement with, I'm noticing, is the timing of this. The GFS wants this trough and this jet to move a lot faster than a bunch of the other runs, whereas the NAM takes it a little bit slower, which could ultimately enhance the discrete problem in terms of, okay, are we going to see supercells, or is this going to be one giant squall line that's going to be moving through? And I think if we see more of what we're seeing with the NAM in terms of the parameters, we're going to ultimately see more of a discrete setup first, which will eventually evolve into more of a linear system, where it ultimately just becomes a huge straight line wind threat. But I do think that based on what we're seeing with runs, we're going to be seeing more of a discrete threat first before the squall line develops in the late afternoon and early evening of March 4th. So we'll have to see how this pans out. But already that wind speed is pretty concerning, to say the very least. Let's go ahead and show you some CAPE values real quickly. NAM's CAPE values are pretty interesting, mainly because they are concentrated in one area. Although, granted, you don't need a lot of instability with the shear you have available to really get things started. But here's what we're looking at. We're looking at up to 2,000 joules per kilogram of CAPE in parts of central Louisiana. As the system's organizing and developing, as you start to see potentially this squall line start to organize and develop, you're going to have a lot of instability. Now, in this part, granted, in the deep south, 2,000 joules per kilogram in this part of Louisiana is equivalent to, say, 3,500 joules per kilogram in the Great Plains. That is a lot of instability, and if you're seeing instability at that high that high in parts of the deep south, you're going to want to take this very seriously, especially with the amount of shear that we are seeing with this. It also doesn't help that this region is right next to the Gulf, which is advecting moist air like it's no tomorrow. And it's going to really enhance a lot of this severe weather threat. Matter of fact, let's go ahead and show you the temperatures and dew points affiliated with this. Let's go ahead and take a look at this. In the morning of March 4th, you're looking at temperatures in the low to mid 60s in parts of Louisiana, Mississippi. You start to get a little bit cooler, but you have a lot of warm air advection from the Gulf right here. That is really going to enhance the severe weather threat. And by the time you get to 21Z, you're looking at temperatures in some parts increasing to the mid-70s. Here's the dew point temperature. Dew point for the NAM is absolutely incredible. And let's go ahead and also compare this to the GFS. The GFS is also uptrended on the dew points. We're looking at dew point temperatures into the upper 60s. Yesterday, if you remember, let's go ahead and look at the 12Z for yesterday. We were looking at some dew points generally in the mid 60s, but nothing too high other than that. But ultimately, what you're seeing now is you're seeing a massive uptrend, especially in these parts of Louisiana, as this system starts to organize and develop and become more linear. You're looking at dew points at almost 70 degrees and temperatures that are around like 71. You're looking at a very high moisture content with this, and that is really going to help enhance your instability with this. Now, there are a few things we need to pay attention to, but by and large, look at all of this right here. This is the morning. Look at all of this moisture you have right here. The relative humidity, even at the surface, is quite impressive, to say the very least. And that's a very big concern that I am seeing right here. Now, I do want to take a quick look at something. I do want to take a look at the cloud cover, because the modeled cloud cover is a bit interesting. It's going to be overcast throughout the evening, but then you're going to start seeing ultimately some scattering of the clouds. We'll have to see what happens, but ultimately the models are indicating more of a cloudy scenario until you get to like Mississippi, Alabama for moisture and for instability to really ramp up. Let's go ahead and take a look at the GFS. GFS wants this to be completely overcast right here, which would ultimately inhibit severe weather development and severe storms. But if you do start seeing clearing in a lot of these areas, and you start to see the model runs heading towards that general direction where we're looking at potentially more clearing, that's a very bad sign. Now, a very bad sign for what's going to be happening, because what you need, what severe weather needs is they also need, on top of all the CAPE and on top of all the other parameters we've been showing you, what they need is what they need is sunlight. What they need is the sun to warm up the atmosphere, and you can't really do that too well with clouds going on. The perfect severe weather day is a partly cloudy sky for two reasons. Number one, the sun heats the top of the cloud, and number two, the sun can still get through and get through to the surface, warm that up, and then once it radiates back up to towards the atmosphere, it's going to hit the bottom of the cloud, and you start seeing things going right there. So a partly cloudy setup is the most perfect type of severe weather setup you could get with this. So that's particularly why. If you need me to explain it a little bit better, let me know in the comments down below, and I'll be happy to explain it a little bit better. I know that's a little bit of a basic explanation right there, but ultimately that's kind of the general gist of it. Let's also, just for the sake of curiosity, I want to take a look at the Supercell composite and the SIG-TOR parameter, and oh my goodness, the Supercell composite and the SIG-TOR parameter is very interesting. Based on what we're seeing, we're looking at 17. That is pretty interesting. And look at the speed shear that we're seeing on top of this. That is absolutely incredible. And let's go ahead and also take a look at the GFS as well. GFS is obviously a little bit lower, but it's a lower resolution model, and it's more built for long range stuff. Whereas the NAM and other runs are more generally built for like these mid-range events. But still, Supercell composite of 17 is pretty impressive as it moves through Mississippi and Mississippi, Louisiana, those areas right there. If we go ahead and look at the SIG-TOR parameter right here, SIG-TOR parameter is really starting to go up. And now, granted, I'm not saying that you're going to see a lot of tornadoes with this. We're not 100% sure yet. We'll probably not know until, I would say, tomorrow what the general gist of it, like what the greatest threat's going to be. But by and large, a lot of the parameters are coming together. And I did pluck this sounding right here from the NAM for you guys, just to kind of give you a general gist and to give you guys a quick look at what we're looking at. First of all, CAPE is around, from where I plucked it, around 1,200 joules per kilogram. But look at the SRH and look at the shear. The shear is at 46 knots, only 1 kilometer above the ground. That is going to absolutely enhance your tornado development. And this isn't just speed shear. You're looking at directional shear. You're looking at almost 80 knots of shear at 6 kilometers. Surface or bulk shear is at 76 knots. And it's directional too. That is the perfect combination for if you want strong tornadoes and a lot of them. Now, granted, I'm not saying that we're looking at a huge tornado outbreak with this. There's still a lot of uncertainty, a lot of parameters we need to go over. But this is a very bad sign. And the hodograph over here, also a pretty bad sign in general in terms of what we're potentially looking at. Potentially hazard type PDS TOR. Just, I would throw that out right now. I'm not even going to look at that right now, mainly because what I'm only looking at is the parameters and what we're looking at generally. We're looking at a very high sheared environment with this. We have to take this very, very seriously. We're going to have to continue to watch this as well, and we're going to continue to update you here on the Pat's Path Predictor channel. I am planning to live stream tonight around 7 o'clock just to kind of go over this and kind of get a general gist as to, okay, we're looking at all of these parameters right now. What do we think is ultimately going to happen and why? And ultimately, the goal for tonight's stream isn't to say, okay, what's the greatest risk and all that stuff. The goal for tonight's stream is to say, okay, all these things are in place right here. what are we potentially going to see given the information we have right now, because a lot can change. We're still 3 days out from this, but ultimately I am planning to stream and kind of go over that kind of stuff. But with that being said, we're closing the video out right here. Really hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to like and subscribe if you are new. The goal is to get more people engaged with weather. Shout out to Daniel as an official sponsor of the Pat's Path Predictor channel. If you want to support the channel more directly, be sure to join the Patreon. It's the first link in the description down below. If you want to ask us questions and you want to get some more insight from us, be sure to join the Storms United Discord server, or if you just want to chill and hang out with us, link to that will be in the end screen. And with that being said, have a wonderful day, guys. Stay safe.